round 5 of our Regents review, right? We're looking at the multiple choice, the first page. So first one, right, says in a small city, there's 22 gas stations. The mean price for a gallon of regular gas was $2.12 with a standard deviation of 5 cents. The distribution of data was approximately normal. Given this information, the middle 95% of gas stations in this small city likely charge. So right here, if I'm thinking this is my important piece of information right here, the middle 95% of gas stations. Remember, we know right in normal distribution, 68% of our data falls within one standard deviation, and then 95% falls within two, and that 95% is also the confidence interval, right? So all I really have to do is say, to find my min, right, I'm going to say 212 or $2.12, right, minus 2 times 0.5, right, or 0.055 cents. So I'm really just taking 10 cents off, and then I'm also taking my mean and adding 2 standard deviations. So I'm adding 10 cents to my mean. So if I look, right, what's the answer choice going to be? It should be $2.02, right, because that's so when I subtract to the interval of $2.22. Good to go, right? Big thing, you're definitely going to see the 95% 2 standard deviation / confidence interval. Moving on, right? You got number 2. You have a random sample of 152 students. What statement is best supported by the data, right? So here, right, it has a lot of words, but they're really just asking you the same thing a bunch of times, right? If you read it through, right? What are they asking you? They want to see the probability of being late given that the student walked, and also the probability that a student walked given that the student was late. They do it over and over again, right? Probability of being late given the student walked, right? You see how, like, if you just read it, you're going to see that they're asking you the same thing, right, over and over again, and you just have to compare, right? So remember, whenever you're doing something where it says this probability of being late given the student walked, we want to first look at the total amount of students who walked. In this case, that's going to be 22 kids, right? They walked. And then what's the probability that they're going to be late, right? So then I only am using like this part of the data, right, that they walked. The probability that they're late is 4. So 4 over 22. And then the other way, right, I'm going around now is saying the probability that the student walked given the student was late. Well, how many total students were late this time? That was 30 students. And then that they walked given they were late. So late, how many of them walked? 4. And they want to know that it's greater than, right? So right off the bat, right, I know 4 over 22 is greater than 4 over 30, so that answer choice looks right to me. But if I go back and I just make sure, right, the next one is 4 over 22, in this case is less than, right? Doesn't work because I'm basically using the same probabilities again. We know that they cannot be equal to each other. And then the probability of being late given that a student walk cannot be determined. No, it can be determined. So the only correct answer choice is number 1. All right. Moving on, right? Number 3. What is the focus of the parabola 8 times y plus 2 equals x plus 5 squared? This one is tricky, right? If you think about my equation, right, whenever I'm trying to create a parabola, it's going to be this weird equation, right? Kind of like the 4 times your p, right, equals y minus, oh God, I think it's like k equals x minus, I think, h squared, right? Those 2 letters might be spun around, right? But the idea is, what am I doing, right? The k and the h, right, are going to be the coordinate points of my vertex, right? And the p is the distance between the vertex and the focus. So right off the bat, right, if I know if I'm subtracting here, but I got pluses, in my equation, right, I know that my vertex has to be -5, right? Because if I put the -5 in here, I'd be saying +5. And it has to be -2, right? Because if I put the -2 in here, I'd be adding 2, right? Then I also know, well, my P, right, or my distance between my vertex and what we're looking for, the focus, has to be what? Well, 4 times what number is going to give me 8, right? I know my P, right, has to equal 2, right? So now I have a lot of information, and then I always like to just kind of go and just draw this out in my head to like make a little bit more sense of it, right? So I know if my vertex is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, it's at -5, -2. I know my P is 2, but that means, right, it's positive. So I know that my parabola is going to be going, right, or opening upwards, right? So that means, right, I know that if the distance between my vertex and my focus is 2, well, I'm going to go up 1, 2, and my focus is going to be, right, 2 units, so 1, right, basically 1, 2 units going up, right? Same thing, right, because it's opening up, so it's going to be a positive. If it was opening down, we would have some sort of negative here. So what's the only answer choice here? -5, 0, right? Right off the bat, if you know the vertex is -5, -2, you could knock off these two, right? And then it just becomes a little bit, you have to figure out between 1 and 2. All right. Number 4, the expression 8 to the power of x over 2 times 8 to the power of x over 3 is equivalent to, right here, right, I know, right, one of the oldest rules that we know, when I'm multiplying same bases, what am I really doing? I'm adding my exponents. Well, we know, right, so if I'm thinking, I'm only right now really looking at my exponents for a second. If I try to add x over 2 plus x over 3, number one, I can't put this into my calculator, right, because it's not going to work. And I also can't add them yet because they're not, the denominators aren't the same. In order to make the denominators the same, I'm going to multiply my first one, right, by 3 by 3. My second one, right, by 2 by 2, because I'm trying to get common denominators. This leaves me with 3x over 6 plus 2x over 6, or 5x over 6, right? So I know now that's my power. I bring back my 8, right, because my 8 is being raised to the power of 5x over 6. Always the top is my power. My 6 is going to be my root, right, or the bottom of my fraction. So if I look over here, right, I know right off the bat that these two are not going to work. It's only between these two guys. Well, if I write this as a, right now with a square or with a root sign in or a radical sign, I know my 6 has to be my root, and I'm raised to the power of 5x. Only answer choice, number 1. Not too bad. And that's the end of page 1, right? The first part of our multiple choice.